What's up, everyone? Good morning. Welcome back to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond. It is Thursday morning, January 11th. We finally got some news out of Halas Hall yesterday. Offensive coordinator Luke Getsy dismissed along with our quarterback coach Andrew Janoko. I'm blanking on the assistant tight end coach off the top of my hand here.
Tim Zetz.
What's that?
Tim Zetz, assistant
Tim
tight
Zetz.
ends coach.
Yes, thank you,
Just
Sean.
catching strays out here.
Yes. But yes, some changes out of Halas Hall yesterday, Sean. Let's start just really quickly with your initial reaction out of what you heard.
Yeah, I don't think anything was super surprising. I think we kind of heard what we thought we would hear. They were, of course, justifying their decision to stick with Matt Eberflus. They trotted out the we made progress arguments, and I can't blame them for that. I think that's if this is the direction they want to go, of course they're going to say those things, and I think it's pretty clear that they want to get better on the offensive side of the ball. I think we all saw that for 17 games. We saw the struggles under Luke Getsy the last 2 years, and they're going to have to find the right person to make this work, because this is going to be a huge hire for Matt Eberflus and his future with the Bears.
Yeah, we already have a list of, I want to say, 9 offensive coordinator candidates. Sean's been working on that for the last week to get that ready. That's up at shawlocal.com. Mark Silverman will be sharing his thoughts on what we heard yesterday out of Halas Hall. You can find that at shawlocal.com as well. You can, of course, follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. You can find all of our content at Bears_Insider on Twitter. And once again, shawlocal.com. If you're watching us live this morning on YouTube, do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave us a thumbs up. If you're watching later, you can comment. Of course, you can download this anywhere you get your podcast from. We do this on live stream and then convert this into our podcast. Thank you, everyone who's already joining us live this morning, seeing some regulars in the chat. We'll try and get to some of those questions and comments throughout here. We're going to spend about half an hour with you guys this morning. Sean, I think the place to start, and the thing I'll start with asking the chat is, you got to start at the head coaching position. I think both of us felt going into this offseason here, with the way things had progressed, that we felt that Matt Eberflus was pretty safe. At the end of the day, I do you think the Bears are making the right decision? Is it not bold enough? I think that this was a move that you can justify on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, you could go either way. You could say that you brought Kevin Warren in here to be bold, to think outside the box, and you can be disappointed that they didn't do that. That from everything that I heard yesterday, it sounds like even though they took 48 hours to announce a decision, it sure sounds like they were not thinking about or in contact with anybody outside the building, with a Jim Harbaugh or any other coaching candidates out there. They spent the last 48 hours trying to figure out how they can fix this with Flus. And so I understand why there might be some fans who are disappointed in that. Is that the right choice? I don't know. We're going to have to see how it plays out. I see you trying to butt in, Kyle.
No, I absolutely understand anyone who's disappointed with their decision not to make a change. Their main arguments are continuity and stability. I get that, and there certainly is a level of reasonability when it comes to that. But with that being said, you just fired more than half your offensive staff. You're going to be hiring both coordinators, and so that's one takeaway. Is I kind of have I don't like the idea of continuity and stability when you frame it that way. With that being said, you can make the argument, considering where they started and where they finished, that they made a lot of progress. That given given the adversity that they faced, that Matt Eberflus did a good job of keeping that team together, that they rallied around him, that we've seen multiple instances in the past of players abandoning coaching staff, and that didn't happen. Those are things that weigh in their favor. And quickly, and I'll throw this back over to you, Sean. One of the things that I think we learned yesterday, and the people that wanted Matt Eberflus let go or fired, I think that the realization that they're going to have to come with is maybe Kevin Warren isn't the bold football strategy guy that we expected, right? Like, the idea that they were going to go get Jim Harbaugh, like break out of this Bears mold, maybe that isn't something that was ever really in the cards.
Yeah, I talking about this with some other people yesterday too, other people on the beat. Um, Kevin Warren is the Bears politician. He's the guy who's there representing the Bears. He's here for thinking big picture, but he's also, as we heard yesterday, and I mean, how many times did they use the word deliberate and things of that nature, and talking about making sound decisions, not jumping to conclusions. He's going to play both sides. He's going to weigh the options on both sides, and he's here to take everybody's thoughts into account and sort of come to the best conclusion for the group. And that's kind of what his job has always been in other places he's been. um, you know, Sometimes you do have to make hard choices in that, thinking back to the original decision he made during COVID with the Big Ten. But he's not, he's never going to unilaterally make a decision. He's going to take in Ryan Pohl's thoughts. He's going to take in George McCaskey's thoughts. I don't know that they were ever going to make a call to Jim Harbaugh. I don't know that that was ever really this time around within what the direction that they were thinking. Because I think there's clearly enough people in that building that wanted Flus back, primarily Ryan Poles, that was always going to be a strong possibility.
The working relationship between Ryan Poles and the Bears front office in general and the Bears coaching staff is clearly really strong. And whether you agree with Matt Eberflus's on-field coaching decisions, there's a human element that, and we've discussed this some recently, like there's a human element of working with someone on a day-to-day basis that plays into this more so than I think the general public tends to realize, Sean. And I think you're seeing that play out here. Whether that's clouding Ryan Poles' judgment, I can't say at this point. But that relationship is still really strong. They believe in each other. They have a good working relationship. So from Ryan Poles' perspective, when you put that relationship and the progress they did make on the field, I think you got that sense from them yesterday. Like his reaction to when he was asked about contacting Jim Harbaugh, it was, what was it? Jim's the head coach at Michigan. Like it was almost, it wasn't dismissive in a way to be rude, but it was like dismissive in a way of confidence in his coach is what I think the way I would put it.
Yeah, and I think too the look on his face told the story too. I don't know how many people were watching that when it happened, but
yeah,
you read the quote, and I had lots of people in my comments yesterday saying, "Oh, that doesn't mean Kevin Warren didn't reach out. Oh, that doesn't mean that the Bears didn't reach out through their back channels or whatever." It's like, no, you look at the look on Ryan Pohl's face when asked that question and the way he responded. I really believe that they did not reach out to Jim Harbaugh or his representatives at all.
was that carried anywhere besides their social media platforms? The Bears.
It may have been on ESPN 1000, their radio partner. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, so I ended up watching it on like the Bears Twitter feed because like I turned on the TV first thinking like, NBC Sports would be streaming it live, and it wasn't there. Score didn't have it, so like even if you had it on the score, it's not like you would have seen their faces. But yeah, Ryan Poles definitely had a strong visual reaction when the coaching questions came up.
Yeah, and that really tells you all you need to know about how strongly he believes in Flus. And these two guys at this point, I mean, Ryan Poles has sort of hitched his wagon to Matt Eberflus. Not to say that he couldn't make a change and still remain the GM if it came to that a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. But yeah, I mean, he clearly believes in his coach, and now you're looking at having to bring in a whole new offensive staff, Kyle, and that's going to play really a huge factor in Matt Eberflus's future as the coach. And they got to get this hire right. You have to find a coach who can unlock your passing game, no matter who's the quarterback. You can't be the 27th ranked passing attack in the NFL, especially with a guy like DJ Moore on your roster. And yeah, they fired pretty much everyone. The only coaches coming back are the O-line coach Chris Morgan and Jim Dre, the tight ends coach.
So let's talk about the offensive coordinator position. I'm going to go up here. I think Rick Gonzalez, a regular on the show, had a comment even before we started here. I think he said, "I don't understand how you tell the next offensive coordinator you hire that you have to have Chris Morgan as your O-line coach and not their own coach. So Bears." So I throw that up there, Sean, because I want to frame that in the context of just how easy or difficult do you think this hire is going to be for Matt Eberflus?
I still think it's the Chicago Bears. It's an opportunity to coach a really good quarterback, whether that's Justin, whether that's one of the top draft picks. I still think there's going to be people who want this job in the NFL circles, in the NFL coaching circles. They said their phones were blowing up yesterday. I don't know if I fully believe that. I don't know if that's just trying to drum up positive momentum, but I do think that there are going to be coaches who want this job. I don't think that Eberflus is necessarily on the hot seat going into next year. Obviously, there's always pressure to win, but I don't think that that's going to necessarily hinder them from getting a really good coordinator. I don't know. You might disagree with that.
I don't think they're going to have any trouble with getting the coordinator. I think people. I think it's an assumption to think that if Matt Eberflus is on the hot seat, that people won't want that job. Because here's the thing. Like, there's only 32 coordinator jobs in the NFL. And at the end of the day, there's going to be enough. There are a lot of people, a lot of coaches with a lot of confidence in this profession that are going to come in and say, I'm more than willing to take a chance that I can develop Caleb Williams over the next 2 years and fast track myself to get a head coaching job. I don't think, honestly, I think that might be one of the biggest things working against Justin Fields, right? Is in terms of his Bears tenure, is I think with the offensive coordinator change is they with a head coach in place in Matt Eberflus already that's going to be on the hot seat is I don't know. I think the most appealing thing for a new offensive coordinator would be someone that they can mold from the ground up.
I think they use the word adaptability a lot. They want a coordinator who can look at the pieces that we have and put them in their best positions. I think that's kind of what DJ Moore was getting at after the game on Sunday. I think that's maybe one of the reasons Luke Getsy is gone, is that they weren't able to do that enough. Certainly not in enough games. And I think if you're looking at this, let's just say you're trying to hire a coordinator. You're going to want a coordinator that comes in here and can look at DJ Moore, can look at Cole Kmet, can look at Justin Fields, and figure out, regardless of what that looks like, how can we move the ball downfield with these guys? What does that system look like? And really, the way Caleb Williams plays, I don't think it's all that different, between Justin and Caleb in the style of offense you want to play. He's similar in that he can move in and out of the pocket, make throws on the run, and things like that. Where, I mean, regardless of which quarterback, obviously it changes a lot if you're thinking about it, Drake May, but with those two in particular, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. And Matt Eberflus has said a lot of good things over the last 2 years about the Kyle Shanahan style offense. That's why Luke Getsy was here, because he ran a similar thing, with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, and they came from that same circle. And I do think it's notable that they're keeping Chris Morgan on the staff, because that's the type of offense that he's coached in. He coached under Kyle Shanahan at 2 different teams, with Washington and with Atlanta when they went to the Super Bowl. He was the O-line coach down there. And I do think I think Flus really thinks that highly of Chris Morgan as an O-line coach. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to hire a coach from a similar system. But I do think it's notable that they're keeping an O-line coach who's worked in that system a lot.
I think that they want so that Kyle Shanahan kind of wide zone read, like it's fairly common throughout the NFL nowadays.
At this point, yeah, it's taken over.
Yeah, so like I think the key is I think they're gonna be able to find a fit for scheme. I think the key is, as you hit on there, was the problem with Luke Getsy was that lack of adaptability. Not maybe from a scheme perspective, but matching your scheme to an opponent and maybe even the players you have available in a given week, right? And I say that in terms of, like, I think of like the Equanimous St. Brown injury.
This is a great example. Yeah, keep going.
And you lost a fantastic perimeter blocker. And they frankly did not have anyone on the roster that could replace him when Equanimous St. Brown was out. But they kept running the same plays that they would have run with Equanimous St. Brown on the edge. And you saw Tyler Scott. You saw Darnell Mooney try and do it several times in a position where Equanimous St. Brown typically would have been on the field. Like, I never got the sense that Luke Getsy understood his opponent and understood his personnel and how to adapt them in real time.
That's a perfect example of trying to fit the players into the system, and that's a micro example. That's one small part of the game, but that's exactly it. Like, okay, EQ goes down. Maybe we should do something different on these plays where he was the key blocker. Maybe we should scrap those for a week until he comes back next week. And I think that's kind of what Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles were getting at yesterday when they talked about having an adaptable coordinator. You got to be able to change. You got to be able to. Guys are going to get hurt, and guys are going to be questionable going into Sunday. You got to have backup plans for these types of things.
So Ryan Poles is. I don't want to overextend myself here because he's still an NFL GM. He's not exactly going out here and telling us the truth. But we have a large enough sample size that I can confidently say that Ryan Poles is more forward or straightforward than I would say anyone within the Bears organization that I've dealt with since I have been around.
Certainly more than his predecessors in that position.
Yeah. So there are certainly some things yesterday that I put a little weight to when I hear him say it. And I want to discuss those things. Jaylen Johnson, him saying pretty much flat out saying, like, you don't have to worry about that. Jaylen Johnson is going to be back. I believe that, whether that's through an extension or the franchise tag, I think Jaylen Johnson is going to be a Bear next year, Sean.
Oh, I absolutely think that. I mean, yeah, that comment to me, 100%, if they don't get a deal done between now and February, it's going to be the franchise tag. And Ryan Poles is not going to let this guy get away. I mean, he kind of hinted at that right after the trade deadline where he said some things to the effect of, like, I don't want to lose Jaylen, no, he's a really good player. That's why the asking price when they were potentially exploring trading him was so high. It was a first or a second round pick. At the worst, it was going to be a high second round pick. And
You saw it. You saw it in Week 18, and you saw it earlier in the year when
yes,
Jaylen Johnson was out too. How big of
yes,
an impact his presence or his lack of presence had on that defense.
that's a great point. It wasn't just Week 18. We obviously, it's fresh in our mind. We just saw it against the Packers, where they got they got beat in that secondary. But yes, he was out a couple games earlier in the season, and it was a similar type of thing. And that Kansas City game when he got hurt, I believe it was a hamstring injury, if I remember. He didn't play for much of that game, and it was game over.
Yeah. Proudly serving the Sauk Valley area for over 55 years, Ken Nelson Auto Group offers 10 new vehicle franchises in one convenient location right here in Dixon, Illinois. Shop a great selection of new and pre-owned vehicles at KenNelsonAuto.com. Want to thank Ken Nelson Auto Group for being the sponsor of Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. Another thing that Ryan Poles talked about, Sean, was his timeline for a quarterback decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe him when he says he's going to take this thing into April?
I still don't believe him. I believe him if he's going to keep Justin Fields. I think if you're going to keep the pick and potentially trade Justin, I think you're going to want to do that sooner than that. I mean, maybe not. There's still going to be teams looking for a quarterback when the draft comes in April, but I got to think you're going to get your best offers before free agency for Justin, because there's going to be more teams looking for quarterbacks.
I'm pulling this up here quickly. I forgot to look. I wanted to look up this one of the free agent quarterbacks this year going into this offseason.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is like the big one.
But he's going back to Minnesota. They've pretty much have said, and considering what Minnesota went through at quarterback, he's going back. You're looking at Baker Mayfield is probably the top guy.
It's not a great class. Yeah.
So you're looking at 6, 7, maybe 8 teams that are looking for starting quarterbacks going into this. You might get 1 or 2 guys out of free agency that are going to be starting quarterbacks. You might find one guy available via trade, although it's still early. We're just starting the NFL postseason. But I feel like the last couple of years, like whether that was Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, there were some names you knew going into the offseason that were going to be on the block.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel like we've reached that point yet, Sean. And then you have 2 very, very good quarterback prospects in Drake May and Caleb Williams. And like we were talking about, there's probably going to be 5 or 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. But those 2 guys, I think, are head and shoulders ahead of those guys. So I think I'm laying this all out to say I don't see a great reason for Ryan Poles to need to rush the decision, because I think holding out probably just increases the value of Justin Fields, because I just don't see a lot of more viable options when you're looking at almost a quarter of the league that's looking for a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and look, Ryan Poles controls the entire board. He can the entire draft is waiting on him to make up his mind. And so whatever that decision is, like, the other dominoes aren't going to fall until somebody trades for the number 1 pick or trades for Justin Fields. Like, assuming you're not going to do both, because you're not going to call the number 2 team, the number 3 team to look to trade up until you know what the Bears are doing at number 1. He's in control of this whole thing. So if he wants to wait till April, he can wait till April and let teams get desperate. And you're right. Like, it's not a great quarterback class in free agency. You're talking about Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill. If those guys get to free agency, it's not like there's tremendous options out there. Certainly some teams, whether those guys go back to the teams they're on now or go to new places, those are likely going to be starting jobs that are filled, but you're still going to have a lot of interest in Justin Fields at any point. You're still going to have a ton of interest in the number one pick at any point. And so Ryan Poles can afford to like take his time on this. There really is no rush. I feel like it's going to be before that, but also like we don't know.
Yeah, it's Ryan Poles it's I'd like to be in his shoes. Like, it's got to be fun. Like, pretty much any room he walks into this offseason, he's the center of attention. He can kind of control that conversation in NFL circles. It's going to be fun to see how they leverage this.
I love the comment he said where, he said something to the effect of like, my head breaks when I think of all the different possible scenarios. And it's like, that's what Bears fans have been thinking too. Like there's so many different ways that they can approach this. And in a lot of ways, I'm glad I'm not the one making that decision.
I'll tell you what, he was given Ryan Poles was given a hypothetical yesterday, and this is more of a side than anything. I liked the fact that he actually he was asked essentially like a trade scenario, and he tried to come up with his own hypothetical before giving up. But like, I like the fact that he didn't just dismiss it. Like, he actually was. You could see the wheels turning about like, oh yeah, how could I make that work?
Yeah,
like I did.
He's clearly thinking about all this stuff too.
Because there are so many ways that this offseason can play out for the Bears. And as a fan, I think that's the most exciting thing. We've talked about, some of the positions, some of the obvious positions that they need to address this offseason. Mm-hmm. But he didn't say specifically, they've talked about needing to gain depth and finding impact players. I can't remember exactly how Ryan Poles phrased it, but essentially like, yeah, we know we've closed that gap a lot. You're going into the offseason for the first time where you have a couple major concerns, but you have the flexibility where you can kind of make a splash. You know what I'm saying? Like, they could, for the first time, they could add something that is a bit of like bells and whistles, right? Like, you're adding a bit of depth that maybe you don't need, or you couldn't afford. Yeah, you can get greedy. Thank you. There are a lot of ways to add to this team to get it in position to compete in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, just throwing out Marvin Harrison Jr. is absolutely in that conversation. I mean, imagine having him and DJ Moore on your offense, no matter who's playing quarterback. Like, if he's as good as advertised, and it sure seems like he's, one of the best wide receiver prospects in recent memory. Yeah, that's absolutely a position where, yes, you need to get better, but like, that could put you like among the top receiving groups in the NFL. And you could think of that with any number of positions. If they drafted a left tackle too, I mean, look, Braxton Jones is a nice player, but if you draft a left tackle and you have Braxton Jones as your swing tackle, I mean, that's an elite group right there with a rookie and Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones. You could say the same thing about a number of other positions as well.
Absolutely. Alan Dunlap checking in this morning says, what if someone like Phoenix or Washington, Phoenix, that threw me off there. Phoenix or Washington trade for the pick, and they're this year's Carolina Bears could have top three a pick 3 years in a row. That's the goal, right? Isn't it, Sean? Just continue to get the number one pick somehow, and then flip it each year.
Yeah, just figure out who's going to be the worst team next year and trade with them.
And that would be nice.
There's a lot of luck involved in that too. I understand that, and yeah, like if you can keep having multiple first round picks, that's great. But you don't know where those are going to wind up. And so you still don't know if you're ever going to have a top, the number one pick, a top 3 pick. Like, you can't predict that. I know you can think that a team's going to be bad, but you really don't know how that's going to play out. And that's why this is such a unique opportunity with the number one pick and these quarterback prospects.
All right, we got to get out of here in a few minutes, guys. But before we do, we will, of course, just because the Bears are going in the offseason, we're going to be with you guys throughout the offseason. We'll start breaking down some of these free agent scenarios, some of these trade scenarios, draft stuff. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to coaching hires here. So we'll be back with you guys next week as soon as the Bears figure out this coaching hire at the offensive coordinator position. I'm sure we'll be jumping on shortly after that. But Sean, I did want to spend a couple minutes talking about Kevin Warren and the stadium. Anything that you took away from that yesterday?
I mean, I think the takeaway is it's Arlington Heights or Chicago. There's any talk of these other towns, or I don't even remember who else was involved. Waukegan,
Naperville,
Aurora, Naperville, Rockford. That's not happening. I mean, it's Arlington Heights or it's Chicago. And frankly, in my opinion, I still think they're just trying to put pressure on Arlington Heights because they bought the land. Like, don't forget that. They own the land. I know there's issues with the taxes and all that stuff, but they're far more likely to wind up in a place where they already own the land. They can do whatever the heck they want with it than, the South lot. That's great. Kevin Warren seems to love Chicago. Cool. He wakes up in the morning and stares at the buildings and says, "Oh, great. Did you read that story, Kyle, the Kevin Warren feature the other day?"
I did not.
They followed him on game day. This was from the team website. And,
okay.
He steps outside and takes in a big breath of air and says, "Downtown Chicago's great." That's all fine and well. But that's all fine and well. But, the South lot is going to be, there's a lot of challenges with that as well in the Chicago Park District.
Yeah, Alan says, I thought Warren was most vague when he talked about the stadium. I feel the same way, Alan. There's a lot of politicking happening behind the scenes right now, and I'm not surprised. I'm not entirely surprised, Alan. But I did expect to get a little bit more of a concrete answer coming out of this season. Maybe not like a timeline, but maybe a little bit more insight exactly into what is the Chicago idea? If this is more than just trying to put pressure on Arlington Heights, like we've heard about the talk about the South parking lot, but is there anything more than just speculation and just talking about the South parking lot? Are they going ahead with any kind of renderings, anything like that? A lot of vagueness yesterday when it came to that talk.
Also, if you're doing it in the South parking lot, I mean, yeah, it would depend if the Chicago Park District is selling them land or if there's still going to be, obviously they want to own their own stadium. So that's kind of the purpose. I don't know why the Chicago Park District would be into that. They own a stadium right next door. So that seems weird to me, but ultimately you can do a lot more on 300 plus acres in Arlington Heights than you're going to be able to do on the South parking lot. In terms of building not just a stadium, but building everything that you want to build around it too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just a matter of time. Like I said, a lot of politicking happening here. Sean, anything we didn't?
I do think it's notable that I think he said this in the past, but he had a comment yesterday that when the shovel hits the dirt, he expects his team to be playing there 36 months out. So we're talking, once they start building, he wants this thing done in 3 years. That's the only sort of timeline we have ever gotten on this whole thing.
Anything we haven't talked about this morning, Sean, that they hit on yesterday?
No, I think we mostly hit on the big points. I mean, we'll have to watch how this coordinator search goes. I think the defensive coordinator is interesting in that you're going to have to find somebody who can work within your system. Flus never said, hasn't made up his mind if he's going to be calling the plays or not. I think that probably, you could go either way on that. But
I think he's calling. I think that was a sign that he's calling the plays.
I think he's probably going to try to call the plays. I don't know what kind. This may just be a situation where they promote somebody from within. Maybe that's the easiest way to fill this spot.
Yeah, I think he's calling the plays from yesterday. If not, he would have been more. It would have just been easy enough yesterday to be like, yeah, we're going to hire a defensive coordinator. I need to, we made it work, but I got to focus on the head coaching responsibilities. I think he might be an example of a guy that not just enjoys it, but it might actually help him a little bit in terms of staying in the game flow. That makes sense.
No, I think so. And look, the CEO head coach thing, didn't exactly work out for him his first year. They lost a lot of games. I know that was for a lot of reasons, not just the head coach, but he found a rhythm this year. I'll say that. Like he has that defense playing really well, and on some level, why would you mess with it?
All right. Thank you, everyone who joined us live this morning, listening to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. We really appreciate everyone who joined us each and every time. Do us a favor, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and a thumbs up as well. You can, again, listen to this, download this, wherever you guys get your podcast. Follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. You can find myself on Twitter at Kyle Nabors. Stick to shawlocal.com. We'll have a lot of content coming your guys' way this weekend. Stay warm. It's going to have a lot of snow this weekend, it sounds like. Enjoy the playoff football, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Later, everyone.